Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. National Tax Security Awareness Week Day 3. Choosing a special identity protection PIN adds extra safety for taxpayers. But first, an attempt at a joke. I apologize in advance. Have you ever noticed that the government dealing with the economy is like a man running laps around his bed to catch up on sleep? You feel like you just need to shake the guy and say, just stop doing stuff. Let your body relax after having unnecessarily overexerted it for decades with these cocaine-induced fits and spasms. But you know what the response would be if you did say that. They'd look at you with those crazed bloodshot eyes as if you were the crazy one, yell at you for interrupting their oh-so-important work, down a cup of coffee, do some more coke, and continue the pointless and destructive pacing around the bed intended to catch up on sleep. But at twice the pace and twice the twitch in that left eye. I don't know, but I'm thinking maybe we should stop asking this guy for advice. Plus, Jack Dorsey went to the doctor after separating from Twitter feeling depressed, requesting some kind of tweetment. And apparently the Decepticons have unleashed their greatest world destructor ever, Omicron. We've gotten so crazy these days about Omicron that we actually think the entire country needs to be shut down due to some random rumors from some hotel somewhere that an elevator was coming down with something. IRS YouTube video, security measures help protect against tax-related identity theft. There's a link to that here. IR 2021-238, December 1st, 2021, Washington. As part of a wider effort to increase security, the Internal Revenue Service today reminded taxpayers they can get extra protection starting in January by joining the agency's Identity Protection Personal Identification Number, the IPPIN program. Anyone who can verify their identity can protect themselves against tax-related identity theft by obtaining into the IPPIN program. More than 5.1 million taxpayers are now participating in the IPPIN program, enabling them to proactively protect themselves against identity theft. The IRS has made recent changes to the program to make it easier for more taxpayers to join. The fastest and easiest way to receive an IPPIN is by using the Get an IPPIN tool. There's a link to the Get an IPPIN tool here. So a quick recap on the IPPIN kind of idea. Normally, obviously, when you file the tax return, the IRS sees you as a number, that number typically being your social security number. However, we've had that social security number since we were a child. We had to give it to every kind of institution that we have ever, dealt with for our entire lives and so on and so forth. So it's possible that identification number could be compromised at some point in time. And at this point in time, we have heightened risks for people trying to file fraudulent tax returns due to the fact that we have all this money kind of flowing out in part from the advance payments that are going into play with this child tax credit. And then we have the earned income credits, which are quite substantial at this point. We've got then the payments with regards to the stimulus payments and so on and so forth. So that makes then the filing of a fraudulent tax return, even if it's a basic one on the low income side of things, kind of a valuable thing to try to steal. And the way you steal that is by stealing identity and then, filing a fraudulent tax return and so on. So if your information has been compromised or you're worried that it could be compromised and someone might file a fraudulent tax return, you could safeguard against that by basically getting an IPPIN, which is kind of like a second social security number. This used to be a measure that the IRS would take if you had already been compromised, meaning if you had to go through the process already of somebody basically filing a fraudulent tax return, and then the IRS decided to needed to have some way to prevent that from happening in the future, they would give you this IPPIN. Now you could sign up for it proactively, however, and so you could get that before someone steals your tax return or your information and act proactively. And I think it changes every year. So it's actually a much more, it's a useful identification number in that way, or it's less likely to be compromised than the social security number that is going to be there, that's been there our whole lives, although it's harder to deal with and so on, because it's going to change every year. But that's basically the idea. So today's reminder marks the third day of the National Tax Awareness Week. which runs through December 3rd. This annual observance is sponsored by the Security Summit, a partnership that includes state tax agencies, the nation's tax industry, and the IRS. The Security Summit was established in 1915 to protect taxpayers and the nation's tax system against tax-related identity theft. This unique collaboration between the public and private sectors has increased mutual defense against criminals trying to file fraudulent tax returns and steal refunds. One of the key features of the IRS system involves an IPPIN, which is a 6-digit number assigned to eligible taxpayers to help prevent the misuse of their Social Security number or individual taxpayer identification number on fraudulent federal income tax returns. An IPPIN is known only to the taxpayer and the IRS, originally designed for confirmed victims of tax-related identity theft, so meaning this was their response after someone had already had to deal with the fact that someone stole their identity, filed a fraudulent tax return, and the IRS had no idea of how to stop that from the future to happen. This is how they stopped it, giving you a new number, basically a new name. You now have a new name given to you by the IRS. It's the IPPIN. So the IPPIN program was expanded in 2021 to include any taxpayer nationwide who wants the additional protection and security of using an IPPIN to file tax returns with the IRS. Quote, when people have this special code, it prevents someone else from filing a tax return in their name, end quote, said IRS Commissioner Chuck Reddick. Quote, the fastest way to get an identity protection PIN is to use our online tool, but keep in mind people must pass a rigorous authentication process. We must know that the person asking for the IPPIN is who they really say they are, end quote. An IPPIN helps the IRS verify a taxpayer's identity and accept their federal income tax returns, regardless of whether they are filing electronically or on paper. The online Get an IPPIN tool at irs.gov/IPPIN, there's a link to that here, immediately displays the taxpayer's IPPIN. In each subsequent year, any participating taxpayer will then use the tool to obtain a new number. The IRS urges any IPPIN applicants previously rejected during the identity authentication process to try applying again in 2022. The authentication process has been refined and improved, now enabling many taxpayers screened out in the past to have a better chance passing the authentication process. So obviously that is an important thing. If the IRS is going to give you a new name, at least with regards to the IRS, which is a new number, then they got to make sure it's actually you there. And so they got to refine down their authentication process to do that. So before applying, keep in mind these key points about the IPPIN program. For 2022, the Get an IPPIN tool is scheduled to launch on January 10th. It's the fastest and easiest way to get an IPPIN. It is also the only option that immediately reveals the IPPIN to the taxpayer. For that reason, the IRS urges anyone try to get an IPPIN tool before pursuing other options. So they want you to do it online. That would be the first option typically. So no identity theft affidavit is required for taxpayers opting in. This means that anyone who voluntarily applies for an IPPIN doesn't need to file Form 14039 Identity Theft Affidavit. There's a link to that here with the IRS, meaning the old process used to be that you would have to have the affidavit to prove that you had a problem so that they would go through this assigning a new number. But now they're expanding it. This is my interpretation in any case. They're expanding it now so you don't have to do that anymore, because you can do it proactively without having had your identity stolen and your tax returns filed and so on without it actually being you. So the IPPIN is valid for 1 year. This means that each January, any participating taxpayers must obtain a newly generated IPPIN. Be sure to enter the IPPIN on any return, whether it is filed electronically or on paper. This includes any amended returns or returns from prior years. So obviously, it's just like turning in your homework in the old classroom. You got to put your name at the top of it. You got to put your name on it. And the IRS has assigned you a new name, which if you've opted into this program, which is the number of the IPPIN. So doing so will help avoid processing delays or having the return rejected by the IRS. Anyone with either a Social Security number, SSN, or Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, ITIN, who can verify their identity is eligible for the IPPIN opt-in program. Any eligible family member can get an IPPIN. This includes the primary taxpayer, the person listed first on the tax return, the secondary taxpayer on a joint return, personal listed second on the return, or any of their dependents. With one key exception, neither reveal an IPPIN to anyone. Don't reveal the IPPIN. The only exception is a taxpayer who uses the trusted tax professional to file their return. Even then, only share the IPPIN with the trusted tax pro who it is time to sign and submit the return. The IRS will never ask for an IPPIN. Remember to watch out. Phone calls, emails, and texts requesting an IPPIN are scams. Identity theft victims should still fill out an ID theft affidavit. This means that any confirmed victim of tax-related identity theft still needs to file Form 1439 with the IRS if their e-file tax return was rejected by the agency due to a duplicate SSN filing. So in other words, if you did get your identity theft or someone stole your identity and filed a tax return, you would have to do it. You'd still have to do this affidavit process in that case. But if you hadn't got your identity stolen yet, you can still do this new PIN proactively if you so choose. So the IRS will then investigate their case. Once the fraudulent tax return is removed from their account, the IRS will automatically mail the IPPIN to the confirmed victim at the start of the next calendar year. So if you got identity stolen, someone filed a fraudulent return, then it's a slightly different process because you have to then first tell the IRS there's a fraudulent return. They're going to have to figure it out. They got to then fix the fraudulent return. And then in the process of them doing that, they'll automatically give you this IPPIN. That was the old process after the problem has already happened. So because of security risk, confirmed identity theft victims cannot opt out of the IPPIN program. Options for people who can't pass the online authentication process. 2 options are available for people who cannot pass the IRS online identification process. One involves filing Form 15227, and the other requires a visit to an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center, the TAC. There's a link to that here. Unlike the online option, both of these options involve, for security reasons, a delay in receiving an IPPIN. Form 15227, there's a link to that here. For processing year 2022 individuals with an adjusted gross income of $73,000 or less, and those married filing jointly with an AGI of $146,000 or less with access to telephone, can complete Form 15227 and either mail or fax it to the IRS. An IRS representative will then call them to verify their identity with a series of questions. Taxpayers choosing this option who pass the identity authentication process will generally receive their IPPIN in about a month. IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center. Any taxpayer who is ineligible to file a Form 15227 may make an appointment to visit an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center, a TAC. Anyone using this option must bring 2 forms of picture identification because this is an in-person identity verification. An IPPIN will be mailed to the taxpayer after their visit. Normally allow 3 weeks for delivery. To find the nearest TAC, use the IRS local office locator online or call 844-545-5640. There's a link to the locator. I'll have a link to this in the description so you can look up that phone number as well. The IRS, state tax agencies, the private sector tax industry, including tax professionals, work in partnership as the Security Summit, just like the Justice League, but for taxes, to help protect taxpayers from identity theft and fraud and refund fraud. This is the 3rd in a week-long series of tips. There's a link to those tips here to raise awareness about identity theft. The irs.gov/security summit. There's a link to that here for more details. Also, check out the most recent A Closer Look column on National Tax Security Awareness Week. There's a link to that too here, and there'll be a link to this in the description.